Okay, there we go. All right. So let's see what he says. V'hinecha gavarn is bar la'erev drush rishon shal pesach be'inyan arba kosos. Ki akadatam, that name is chalik v'shtei bechinos. Shlosha osios emzius hen kadat. Heim begematria gal. So this is Rabbi Hillel's book, Adagal Azeh. He has that book called that name. Now, this is not developed as much as I'd like because Gal is like a big deal over here. Behem is chalfim b'shlosha osius so lamed k and yud the elokem. So those three letters the v'shtei osius aim enim is chalfos, they don't switch. Nimsa ki nechlach v'shtei tevos aim and gal. Ki osius gal keven shehem is chalpos, and since that's the part that gets switched, na'as rachamim, and that's the switch that takes place. The rachamim now, in the middle, he says, in the middle, I guess he's saying that in the middle of the name Elokim, that's the place where the switch takes place. Ki osius lamed ke yud, or I'll call it lucky, heim din de Elokim, they refer to the din place of where the real din, the ikr, the din is. It's interesting. So that leaves you the letters aim, and the aim are physical, are permanent. Aleph to men. Sochav Elokim nischalpu na'as racham, and that's the place where the din takes place, and they get switched, and they made it to racham. Masha ain came b'shtei osios aim, which is not the case over there. I don't know if I looked at this down below, number ches in the Shefa Kavanos down below. Let me get that over here. 1 second. And it says, Masha ein came b'shnei osios aim, yesh the ayin de la'erev b'drosh base de Pesach, nizbar de osios mem, gam came nechlefes, ma'os mem stuma, the mem pesucha. Rak mekeben shenisharis b'sof teva, but since that's really the switch that should take place, it's only the aleph, which I want to say the aleph is the only one that doesn't switch. So he says, so rak mekeben shenisharis b'sof teva, since it rains there nechteves stuma, that's where they want to write it. So he says mashma that one also switched. It opened up a little bit. The tzarich lomer the b'kol makom. Because practically speaking, it's still a mem stuma, as Reb said Sofit. He said, all of that. So just get a little bit more idea on that, moving right along. So he said, Omer Yaakov Avinu, all of a shalom. Let me get this back down here. 1 second. All of a shalom. Al derek hanal hagal hazeh ad. Excuse me. All of a shalom ad hagal hazeh. That ad. I'm sorry.
Aid hagal hazeh.
Where are we hit? Aid hagal hazeh. Oh, you mean you want to say that in Rabbi Hillel's book, when he says ad hagal hazeh, it should be aid?
Not me, it's the pasuk. The pasuk is aid hagal hazeh.
That's actually what it says. So I always aid that means something else. So it means really a testimony. So here ad, I thought it means until you reach this place. That's what I thought it meant. So you told me it's a different shot. Aid hagal, that the gal itself is the aid. So here's a little, I think, just a note, but he tells you where it doesn't tell where I want to see. Exactly. So Remez El Hashem HaNizkar Shu B'Gematria Aid. So we're calling it Aid, which is a Gematria 74, which is that Gematria of Akadatam. Amnam Ha'osios HaMeschalfos Bo, the letters that switch, Him B'Gematria Gal. B'Hina B'Chagalos Niglos, Hashem HaNizkar the Yom Lag B'La Omer, the 33rd day for the Omer. Shuhu Sod Osius and Mischalpus, which is the secret, and that day, the secret of that day, is that the letters switch. Shuhu Yoser Racham and Knizkar, Oz Pascal Milamos. Then everybody, the dying stopped. Now there's a Masoras Hakavanos over on the side. I don't know if we just says that we saw some of this previously in another drush from Rabbi Shmuel Vital. Let's look at number Lamed Ches on the side of Masoras Hakavanos. He said, Mashar Hakavanos Hakavanos Hashem is Zal Zia. So I guess he's saying that's where it's coming from. Inyan Masha Pascal Malamos, Balag the Omer, who Bamasha Yudula Shadalad Shavuos of Rishonas Koya Bechabat. Okay, so we know that the source of the Mochin is coming from the Chabad. Shavuach Chamishi, though, who Chesed Shuhu Gufa. That's where it starts in the Guf. And he's going to say something that I just really don't understand. And in that 5th week is where you find Lag Ba'omer, La'omer. Masha Ein Kain Badala Shavuos Rishona Shuchoya B'chabad V'hu Shahu Reisha. This is where it gets a little bit hard for me to understand. Mishum Chachi calls the man Shuchoya B'chabad Hoya Poel Adin. So during the Chabad, I would think it would be the opposite. But he says that as long as this the Mochin are coming from the Chabad, he said, Hoya Poel Adin, the din is active, let's say active. And he said, what's the reason? Because in the Gar, or he says in the Mochin, up above, he says there's no Shaychus to regret. Ava begin with Shavuos Achronim, Shehem Bachagtam, Shuhu Gufa, dealing with Chesed Gevurah Tiferes and Malchus, which is referring to the body. Shai Charata, there it is. Veina Poiladin, so then the din doesn't actually take place. Now, I have no basis for understanding that idea. So he said, Rabbi Kadisha, Patikun Amitzcha, over there, it could have been over there, but Sham Omer V'gam Netzach Yisrael, I guess, let's say Netzach Yisrael. Let's say, what could that mean? The Netzach part of the Guf? Lo Yishaker will never lie. Lo Yinachem, will not be, I guess, not regret. Ki lo Adam ku lehinachem. Now, what is it to have regrets? So what he's saying is that in the Gar, or let's say the Gar of the Mochin, what do I want to say? So the Mochin of Chabad, right? Basically, he says there's no regret there. So since there's nothing to stop it, I guess is what he means. It's just a plain flow. I don't know. So he says there's nothing to stop it, and so therefore there's no regret. Hai Razo Kimna, so this secret we've already explained, Kol Hakun Netzach is Pashed Begufa. So let's say the Netzach is going into the body. Let me see what he's trying to say. He's saying that the Netzach, okay, the Netzach. He said, the Tale al Almach of the maiden. So there's a time where it's hanging there, or let's say suspended, or waiting in some way, al Almach the maiden and the world to judge it. V'tav mischarta, but in Netzach you could do tshuva over there, mischaret. V'loch of avid dina itayvin, and no din takes place if there's tshuva there. So that's I don't really understand the inner workings of this idea. He wants to say that the top part, the kachbad, that part is going to flow no matter what. And since it's a time of dinim, it's a time of katnus, so I guess I'm trying to reason out what this is. So therefore, there's no charata, it just flows. So therefore, it's flowing in katnus, flowing in din. But on the 33rd day, and there's more to be said about the 33rd day, but on that time, or it says as Netzach comes in, then there is a possibility of charata. And the reason why is because it's in the case of man. And it's possible to have regret. Apparently there's a lot more. There's a lot more to be seen over there. The Nirish that this in fact is the truth. that for some reason in this fifth week, that's the week of Hod, that everything is going into the body, and there's a possibility on that particular day, which is the Hod of Hod, to have regret, which is tshuva. V'nira gam came shezecha b'hu hatam shadalad yamin and b'shonim shechel v'servisi made tshuva hu yoser din. Okay, because he says once again this concept, which is not so easy to hear, the way we normally look at things, is because the top part, the kachbad, is just going to flow. So that's the reason why the first 4 days of Yitzhak made tshuva is problematic for din. And he says that's the part. Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Shalom. Namerlo, they said to him, Al Toisif Daber Elai. So he said, Hashem said to Moshe, that's the end of the talking. Od, further, that's the end of the talking. Elai Daika, what does he mean by that? Kamasha Kasa Bekriyas Yamsuf, Ma Titzak Olai. It's like the same kind of phrase. So stop talking, it's not time to talk. So Elai Daika, that it means Daika. What does Elai mean? That the whole thing has to do with the flow from Atika. This is really beyond me here. And he says, well, you can understand this. Okay? I believe it. Okay, so that's a new idea about how things flow. The big question is, what happens on Lag BaOmer that makes it different? And I don't know if we'll get to it, we probably might, is that there's a big steerer here. It's going to come up now. Yizboyer Shorsh Nishmas Chamisha Talmidim Shasamak Rabbi Akiva La'achar Mekan So he had said that the katnas had to do with the 24,000, and he had the permutations there of the name Elokim. They're all different branches of the name Elokim, and they disappeared, they died. And at this time, then, what happens is that the dinim of katnas become nullified, is really big time Hasidim. Did I read the right Talmidim? I'm sorry. The godless. Now, this is another place where I get confused, because he says that we've been talking straight about the Rabbi Akiva represented Gevura in Das, which is going to kind of contradict that a little bit here if we get to it. He says, Gevuras the godless. So what do Gevuras do? I mean, the Gevuras build up the Nook. That's what the Gevuras do. But in some places he talks about the Chasadim. I get confused about what we're really doing. So here he goes talking about the Gevuras. Shehem Keneged Chamisha Ozes Akadatam. Shehem Rachman. So he says each one of I think he means each one of the 5 Gevuros, which are the people which are Musmach, he says that the Kadatam Shehem Rachman. Ve'elu Niskaim Ba'olam, and they lived. V'hirbitu Torah B'Rabbim. Who are they? And I think that in Rabbi Hillel's book he has a Rabbi Yossi in there maybe. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar ben Shavuah, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Nehemiah. So in the Tiv he just tells you the same thing basically. Now he says Yisboyer Shorsh Nishmas Rabbi Akiva. Now he makes this little contradiction. I'm Rabbi Akiva, and then call Bechinas Chamisha Gevur Shebadas. He's not all the 5. Now maybe that's the reason why Rabbi Memran started talking to me about, when we get to this deal about the Lag BaOmer, that he was talking to me about Rabbi Akiva. And it somehow made sense to my neshama. I don't know how. Well, maybe this is how. Amnam Rabbi Akiva Chaneno called Bechinas Chamisha Gevur Shebadas. He's not all of the 5 of them. We said before that he was the Gevur Shebadas. Rak Bechinas Gevura Shenikras Hod, but only one specific Gevura. He's the Gevura of Hod. What's peshat Hod? V'achrona Chashabechem, which a Hod is the last of the Gevuros. But that's him. He's the Hod. But the other five, his Talmidim, there represents the hispashtus of the Gevurah. So, I mean, of that Gevurah are the pashtus of the five Gevuros, which is also, he just mentioned that it's the name Akadatam. The Yoski, so which goes with which letter, but nobody's talking about that. Ki hu bechina Elyona, because he is really the upper bechina. He says Gevuras hahod shebedas atzma. So I'm just thinking, didn't mark any particular notes over here, so let's keep going on. Rabbi Lekulam, so he became that das, which is the das of Hod, that Hod, which is the Gevura. He says that's actually Ahoya Rabbi Lekulam, Afal Pish Hem Kol Kodalim Kol the Chamisha Gevuros, even though they're the five. The fish Hem Atachtonim and Hispashtas Beguf, because they represent the Hispashtas. So even so, he says, Ukavar be'arnu ki Rabbi Akiva hu gevur of sahod shebedas the kaddas begam the godless. Now, I don't know if there's anything in here that really is going to teach me about this idea. There is this Mesuras Hagavuros, Hagavanos up above. Let me just straighten this out just a little bit. He says, this Omer Shmuel, it's also the same one that's down below. These two are the same, the Shefa Kavanos. So let's read just, I don't know, what should we read? Let's read the Rav Shmuel. He says, Omer Shmuel, it says, I'm in the Mesoras Agavanos rather. See, he's a Raya Ladavar, Mamashakos of Rashbi, Oliver Shalom, Be'id Rabba, what did he say there? The Zechel Deshono, Da'ana Chame Chashta, that I now see, Mal Delo Chame Barnash, Miyoma de Sale Moshe, Zimna Tinyona de Torah de Sinai. So he says, I can now see what no one has seen, except that he says such a tremendous vision. I don't know how this ties into anything, I'm not sure. So he says how it ties in. He said until the second time, I guess after the second time that Moshe went up to Har Sinai, I think it's mashma that what Moshe saw on the first time was on a higher level. On the second time he went up, it was on also tremendous level, and this is the level right below that Rabbi Shimon reached. Now, what did it have to do with it? So it had to do with, I'm not sure what it had to do with. It had to do with who Rashbi was, but I don't know what it had to do with Rabbi Akiva. Let's go on. It says, Nizbar Inyan Minhag Shenagul Yisrael. So here's where I think a big steerer comes in. Nizbar Inyan Minhag Shenagul Yisrael the Lecha B'yom Lagla Omer Al Kivri Rashbi. V'Rebbe Elazar Beno Al Shecha Kavurim Be'ir Meron. Says the Inyan Minhag Shenagul Yisrael, so the minion of the Minhag are Minhag. The Lechet B'yom Lag LaOmer, to go on the 33rd of day, LaOmer, Al Kivri Rashbi, V'Rebbe Elazar Beno, Asher Gavurim Be'ir Meron, Kanoida, V'Oichlim V'Shoyse V'Smechim Sham, and there you have a party there. So he says, Ani Re'isi the Morizal, so now the Marchel writes, I saw myself, Morizal, Shahodat the Sham Pam Achaz Beyond Lag LaOmer. I know that we've seen this before, but it's Lag LaOmer, Kuvakol Anshe Besa. So I think the Pirish down below is going to say that, this was not the time when he came to stay there, but he came there, I guess Rabbi Chaim Vital was already there. Yeah, he was already there. He was a student of the Ramak. Hu v'kol anshe besa v'yashiv sham shlosha yomim rishonim shalosh shvuahu, and he stayed there 3 days of that week, that is the week of Hod to Hod. So this is the first time when he came up, and I can just imagine, how slow the world was back then compared to, it's hard to understand what it means to come up from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael. It takes a long time. You got to go on some kind of a caravan. I guess that was the way, it's like a Greyhound bus back then. I guess that's how you had to do it. And you know where Tzfat is and Meron is, it's really up at the very top. אבל ואין אני יודע אם אז כה בקי ויודע בחוכמה הזו הנפלא שהשיג אחר כך. So I really don't know what level he was at when he was there. Let's go on. I think I got something coming up to read here, I think. So he says, let's see, Edus al kiyam mincha giluach arosh b'meiron. Now this is where I see is the contradiction, because he went to a very strong statement that the Rav didn't cut his hair until the 49th. And then you had that little thing about the 48th. But here you're talking about Lag BaOmer, which is our minhag. Is it a minhag? So which is it? So he says, V'hu harav chochov Yonasan Sagis. He testified this to me, Shebishana Rishona Kodim Shaholachti Ani Etzlo, that the first year before I started learning by the Rav, Lil Modi Marizal, Sheholech as Beno HaKatan Sham, he took his young son there, Im Kol Anshe Besa, with his whole family. The Sham Giluach as Roshach Gemina Yidua, and there he shaved his head, or he cut his hair. And he had a big party. Now, of course, that's problematic because of that other. We had a whole different idea about the hairs of your Anpin growing down and the senoras and that kind of thing, because it's a time when you really need that, etc. And other ideas. So Aschar Shadol Lomar. So now this is a little slightly different thing. Shalom Lomar. Let me see. Okay, there was a shefa down below, so let's look at it. He said, Meloshan the Ravs, he said, Hoya Baki v'yodeh b'chokma chazuchim v'niflo shehetzig acher kach. So what didn't start like that. The beginning pasuk was, although ein ani yodea. That's what he says, whether or not he had achieved this tremendous height. Well, the Rav only lived 38 years, although those years back then were maybe a lot slower, I don't know. Meloshan Rav Pam Rishona Shabam in Mitzrayim Nira. It speaks like this: Shemaisa Zech B'Doch Hoyel Achash Aldach Rav Zal Lehishtakeya BeEretz Yisrael. It wasn't the time he was going to stay in Eretz Yisrael, but Sof Yomov, that is the last years of his life. Of the Shekam Shanim Kodin Dechem, but it was a bunch of years before that. Ba'od Shachadayim Choyari Zech B'Dar BeMitzrayim. Ola Pam Achas Mitzrayim. So one time he came up, Ubiker be'Eretz Yisrael, and he went through at Eretz Yisrael. Above the Meron, eventually came to Meron, V'sham Ra Oso Marachol, and that's where Marachol saw him. Ve'elacha b'maisach b'bo hoya kavar la'acher she'alach l'dor be'Eretz Yisrael, and this whole idea of what he's doing, that we're going to say the story now, is about what happens after he came into Eretz Yisrael. Ulam Kodim Shabam Marchu Lilmo, the fun of that is the whole time Marchu was watching him, he wasn't really in his inner circle. But then afterwards he went up at the end of his, he keeps saying that way, but I guess that's right, the end of his life. So he really had all this tremendous chachma at that time. But he didn't know whether or not, what was exactly going on. But the minhag that he was observing was on the 33rd, which is the minhag that we have. And then what was the deal about? Was he saying, well, the Rav didn't cut his hair until the 49th, but about everybody else, it's a party day. So what does he say? Let's go on to the next part. How are we doing time-wise? So, Gam Hey the I think I had to read this, so I'll do it again. He the Rav Avraham Alevi, Kibishanach and his keres Chalagam Kusham V'Hoyin Nohig Lom B'Bekol Yom B'Bechus Tishkain. So he explains down below that Tishkain is in the Svardi Seder, and this is a what do you say? He'll explain. Nachem Hashem, he's looking for Nechama. It's a Tachnun type of deal. He's looking at it in a time that it's not a day of Simcha. So he said, Nachem Hashem Elokeinu, Aval Etzion, V'gam b'ki yosef sham amal nachem, and so there also, when the Rav was there, he would go on the 33rd. He was also doing it. So after he finished the Shmona Esrei and he went through Tishkon, Amal Moris also, the master said to him, Ki Rob Hakitz, as Rashbi Oliver Shalom Omed Al Kivro, that I saw, I guess, what does he mean Hakitz? You mean in the summertime? Or that sometime that he saw Rashbi Oliver Shalom Omed Al Kivro, that the Rashbi was standing over his grave.
Yes.
I'm not sure I got this right. Ki Rob Hakitz, like being a vision?
Like he was awake. He wasn't just like in a dream. He actually, when he was awake, saw him.
Saw it, yeah. Okay, so Ki Oliver Hakitz, as Rashbi Oliver Shalom Omed Al Kivro, or whose grave, I'm not sure yet.
No grave.
Huh?
Meron, they're Meron. So he saw Rishimiach, he was awake, he could actually
see it on his grave, on his own grave. Omer el ha'ish hazecha Avraham Alevi, and he said to this man, Avraham Alevi, Ki lama omer nachem b'yom simchasenu, why are you doing this on the day of my joy? Because you're going to be in mourning pretty soon. V'lo yatsa chodesh yamim, a month didn't go by. Ad shemeislo ben Echad, one of his sons died. V'kabel tachumim, and then he sat in Shiva. So here we have the light print on page number, that would be number mem test, but it's way over there. And we'll go to the light print for time. It says Edus Shlishi Mifir Rav. What is this? Rav Chacham, Rabbi Avraham Halevi, Shalov Omer Harizal, that results or the short story. Nishmas Yirmiyahu Navi. So this is a whole other story here. Eliyahu Navi, Yirmiyahu, I guess, talking about the Churban by Rishon. V'hoya Mekonim Tadir al Churban. That's what he did. The Zocha that rose as a Shechina, and he was able to see the Shechina B'chavela, I guess, in her mourning, because of the Ma'aravi, he was able to see that. In that particular year, when he saw the Shechina at the Kosel, he saw Gam Kul B'Meiron B'Lag Ba'omer, he was also in Meron. And Lag Ba'omer, B'Tefidus HaChavimid B'Bechel B'Bonda Yushalayim, She'etz al Hasfardim Maskil B'Tikun Tishkon. So that's when he said, Boni Shonam Tishkon B'Socha, like that's how it starts. He says, well, this place Tishkon. Amasham Harav HaChacham Avraham Acham Nachem Hashem Elokeinu Esevalisiyah. Shomer B'Tefidus Mincha T'Tesha B'Av. That's the kind of thing you say over there. So he stuck it into Lag Ba'omer. Shechein Choy Minhago La'omroch B'Kol Yom Machbash Shechoy Misavel Tadir al Churban, because he was in fact continuously mourning on the Churban. This is the neshama. This is the way the ARI describes this, is that he had the neshama of Yirmiyahu. V'achasher Gemar Tefillah Zalmida, after the tefillah was over, Amalo Arizal Ki Rab Hakit, so I saw wide awake as Rashbi, in other words, I guess with clearly. So Omer lo Lomer the Rabbi Avraham, and he told me to tell you something. That's Rabbi Avraham. Shemak b'she'am Menachem b'yom simchaso shall Rashbi, on the day of the simcha of the Rashbi, Ya'anish v'yicha b'nechama b'karov, he's going to be punished. He's going to be in the chama. Hanish yitztark l'kabatach nonim. V'chein choya Shebesel Chodesh Meis Lo Ben Rachmana Tetzlan. So he filled out the story a little bit more. Okay, we have 3 minutes. So now we're on number 9. I'm going to go back up to the top, I think. We'll see. So why did I write all this? I wrote this in order to show you Ki Yesh Shorish B'Mincha Hazecha HaNizker. There's a root for this that goes all the way back to a testimony, actually, of the Rav seeing Rashbi. B'pratki Rashbi Oliver Shalom Choyim Mechamesha Talmidim, and specifically that he was from the 5 Talmidim of Gedolnish of Rabbi Akiva, V'lechein Zaman Simchasa B'Yom Lag LaOmer. So therefore, the time of his of his simcha would be that day. That's questions about this. If he masha be'arna la'erev b'yom lag ba'omer, like we explained up above in regards to the day of lag ba'omer. Now there is something here. Let's look at the Shefa Kavanos down below, number Yud Aleph, and maybe we could finish out by looking at this, and then it's Hashem Sunday. We'll see what we do. There's a little review in the back. Alama Omer Nachem b'yom simchas seder v'hina v'chein hu yihya b'nechama b'karov bir hakidor. What's he say? Masha hikbe the Rashbech al harav Avraham Alevi al she'amar Nachem. So this must be this is a great man. He was able to see the Shekhinah in morning. Who davka mipnei she'amar zecher bezel al tziyona b'yom simcha. So this happened specifically because he said it at the place of the Tzion of the Rashbi, which is a day which he says al Tziyuna b'yom simchasa. So the whole question is about why is this such a simcha on this day? We went through the drush on the 33rd and the name of Kadatem and the three letters in the middle, which produced the word Gal. So he said Gal could also mean Lashon Gilui. I don't know. So therefore he's punished specifically then. That was his way. All the previous years, that was the way he saw it. That was his minhag. The reason why is the fee. Lo Omer kach b'makom menuchas Rashbi. That's the difference. The difference, he says, is he said it here. The other days he did it in other ways. He came to the Lag BaOmer. Okay, so such a high-level man, he had to know. I was just trying to think. You're playing with the idea of this, of these letters, which in the middle of the Elokim, which has the beginning. Did he know that? As a beginning to switch, but because that's his minhag to constantly mourn, so he mourns even in the time of a kadatam when there's been a switch there on that particular day. I still don't have it clear in my mind. Maybe he has more to say and I missed it, or what is the power of this hod? Maybe he's going to talk about it more, and so we'll see if we can find it for our last year on this B'tz Hashem on Sunday. Have a great Shabbos. Thanks for learning with me.